Last Sunday night in the Haymarket at First-Plymouth Presents, Juan Carlos and I were sharing stories about strange and silly things that have happened at church. And I shared one about something that happened on a Christmas Eve about 10 years ago right here. Now, Christmas Eve at First-Plymouth is a big deal. I mean, there's some 4,000 people gathering. It's such a holy night, and the preacher is especially focused, trying to capture the beauty and the power of the great thing that God is going to do in Jesus Christ. It's a big moment, and I got up into the pulpit to preach. And my first few sentences were highly crafted to draw our attention to the miracle. And right as I began my opening sentence, a bat swooped down, did like a blue angel flyover over that middle pew, and in unison, everyone in that pew ducked. And there was that strange sound of about 10 people all saying, "Yeesh." Well, everybody saw it, and it stopped me in my tracks. And I decided I better acknowledge it, and I said, well, this is a historic building, and that's a false ceiling, and churches have bats in the belfry, and no worries, they won't bother anybody. And I just kind of lost track of my whole sermon at that point. I'm talking about bats. Oh, but they're good. They eat insects, so don't worry. I lost track of my sermon, but then I decided I've got to get back to Jesus. It's Christmas Eve. And I began to talk about that holy child and the great thing that is happening for us, for each one of us. And then right then the bat swooped down again, and it started going back and forth, and the entire congregation, their heads are just doing this. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe I could weave the bat into the sermon. I mean, there were animals at the manger. And I thought in my mind, could I talk about there's cows and sheep and chickens, and God welcomes a bat at the manger? I thought, that doesn't work. You can't mix Halloween. Bats are Halloween with Christmas. You could merge Thanksgiving and Christmas. You could say there was a turkey at the manger, but not a bat. So I'm trying to figure out how to re-enter the sermon. I don't even remember what I ended up doing. But I tell you this, one good thing came of that night. It has seriously lowered the bar on how I rate my sermons. If a bat doesn't appear in a sermon, it's a good one. Let's see how this goes. Do you know that the Buddhists have a phrase, they call it monkey mind. Monkey mind refers to how our thoughts are always bouncing from one thing to another, like a monkey is frantically jumping branch to branch in a tree. We have monkey mind. And the Buddhists will develop meditative techniques to still the monkey mind, to still your mind from that frantic jumping around and be deeply attentive. To slightly alter the metaphor, I think these days we have a lot of bats swooping through our minds. Our minds these days are just filled with anxiety and trepidation and fears. It's just bats swooping. If you add up the fears that we're dealing with these days, it's just extraordinary. We have fears about war, and we have fears about climate change. We have fears about what AI will do, or we have fears about the economy or about political changes, and anxieties heap upon anxieties, and it's just bats swooping through our minds all the time. And so Juan Carlos and I are beginning a sermon series called Fear Not, for Behold. And the main hope of this series is to slow down all those bats swooping through our minds these days. Now, fears, if they galvanize your attention, can be a good thing. Fears can galvanize your energy and focus us on working together for a better world, and that's good, but sometimes fears and anxieties just heap upon one another, and you're paralyzed. You're not working for a better world. So we'll gather at church during this series. Slow down all the bats swooping. We're going to be working together for a better world. Fears should increase your sense of moral clarity and your judgment, but not just bats swooping all the time. Because this world will try to control you by your fears. So we'll slow that down, and we'll discern together how to work for a better world. Fear not, for behold. So let me start with the first part of that phrase, fear not. Do you know it's often said that that phrase appears in our Bible 365 times? Enough for one each day, because we have a lot of fears. I will tell you that's not actually true. I looked into it. The internet says it's in there 365 times. It's actually not. It's about 71 times, but that's a lot. The Bible knows we need to hear that. Fear not. It's amazing how our fears mix with the macro and the micro. You have all these fears about how our world is going to be doing, but we always have our personal fears about how am I doing or what's going to happen in my life. And so there's a phrase here this morning that the angel says to Mary, you should take to heart. The angel says, fear not, you have found favor with God. If anything comes from today, I want you to put that phrase upon your heart. Fear not, you have found favor with God. I mean, so many of us have these anxieties that we're not measuring up, we're not good enough, something's wrong with us. The angel Gabriel's talking to you this morning. I'm trying to make sure the angel's talking to me. Fear not. You're not just good enough. You found favor with God. This fear not, behold, appears 7 times in the beginning of the Christmas story. That combination, fear not and behold. When the angel comes to Mary, when the angel comes to Joseph and they have to flee, this phrase repeats itself. So again, let me focus on this first part. Fear not. Did you see that article in the New York Times this week about how fears can heap upon fears and create a type of PTSD? It was an article about people that have had traumatic experiences on airplanes. Did you see this article? It was kind of haunting. One was telling about a woman who boarded a plane this year, and she was sitting between her father and a stranger, and they'd just taken off, and suddenly there was a loud bang, and the door of the plane had blown off, and the oxygen masks came down, and she thought she was going to die, and she was trying to make a video to her other loved ones saying goodbye, and she was holding with one arm her dad and with one arm the stranger, and they landed safely. But just those 12 minutes have compounded all her fears, and it's called PTSD, and therapists have a technique. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and you sit with someone when their fears are compounding upon one another like that. You sit with them and you help them address how thinking can become distorted, that fears make other fears more fearful, and it becomes unrealistic. And so you work carefully through a person's thoughts, and you work with some relaxation techniques. It's CBT, and it feels to me like the whole world needs CBT right now. cognitive behavioral therapy, because we catastrophize everything in our thinking. And when you're just thinking it and you're not speaking to anyone, it distorts itself and the anxieties increase. So church is important at these moments, because together we will address fears that are real. We do have to work together for a better world. But we need to still the unrealistic, distorted level it all can take. Fear not. Jesus said it to us as well. In 2 Timothy, it says, God has put in you a sound mind, not a mind of fear, but a mind of love. In 1 John, it says, it is love that casts out fear. So we're going to gather, as we always gather, in love. Stop those bats swooping all the time. Fear not, for behold. Behold is one of those great old-time Bible words. Behold. It appears over 1,200 times in the King James Bible. Behold. And it's a great Old English word that doesn't just mean look. It means pay special attention with special appreciation. Behold has a gravitas to it. I love it. It's one of my most favorite words. Behold. It means to make sure you look and pay attention to something that is so beautiful and so meaningful, it will change your life. Behold. But here's the thing. They took that word out of the Bible. No modern Bibles use it anymore because it's antiquarian. It's an Old English word, and they took it out. So you can read almost any modern Bible, and it just says, hey, look. Hey, look. Behold. This is the season we will hear that word a lot because we'll use some of the King James during Christmas. Behold. Because we come to church to behold something so beautiful and meaningful it can change us. William Blake said, we become what we behold. We become what we behold. So we gather and we behold the Christ. And 2 Corinthians chapter 3 says, when we gaze upon the Christ, when you behold the Christ, you are transformed degree by degree into His glory. That you are made into the same image. When we behold the Christ, we become that light and that love. There's a lot of other things in this world you don't want to behold. You don't want to pay so much attention to them that you become them. So what are you beholding? I'm reading a book this week called The Extinction of Experience. And this author is afraid that we're spending so much time on the internet and in social media, that's primarily what we're beholding, that it's changing fundamentally the human experience. She thinks we're in a time that we have to protect the human being right now. Now, this book might sound like it's beating a dead horse. We've talked for years about some of the negative effects to social media and the internet. We know that it seems to increase anxiety and depressions, and we're worried about young people spending too much time, and that anxiety increases, or it starts isolating behaviors, or that people are losing social skills, and we just stare at the phone and we don't interact with each other. And we've talked a lot about the problems with the internet, but she examines it more subtly, this author. She says that human beings now are having primarily mediated experiences, meaning you now are primarily watching other people have experiences rather than having authentic experiences yourself. That through the digital realm, you've become an observer now rather than having your own authentic experiences. And she explores some subtle effects. She says because of the internet, people are no longer looking in each other's eyes as much as they used to. Well, heads are down. We're looking at our phones. What happens if human beings are looking less often in each other's eyes? We've evolved to present our faces to each other. We're social beings. And when you look someone in the eye, you see that they are a soul. They're not just an object anymore. When you look in someone's eyes, you sense the infinite depth. What happens if we're not looking in each other's eyes as much? And then she raises an issue that hurts my heart. She says since the year 2014, these last 10 years with the rise of social media, since 2014, now human beings are spending almost 40% less time with their friends, actually being with their friends. Almost half the amount of time. Philosophers of all ages have said that the key to a good life is friends. Having some people you love and that they love you. That friendships are the primary way we experience love in our lives. And when you're with a friend, you're being seen in your best light. Friends give the best interpretation to your actions. Friends see the best in you and you see the best in them. Friends, they make for a good life. And people are spending 40% less time. The average person spends 7.5 hours on the internet. A lot of people have to do it for work, so that's a big number. 7.5 hours a day. And forget the work stuff. The average human being is now spending 2.5 hours on social media every day. An adult will spend 17 years of their life on the internet. And the author asks, what is the opportunity cost of that? Opportunity cost means if you're doing one thing, you can't be doing something else. What's the opportunity cost to 17 years of your adult life? Well, you could be spending more time with actual friends. What are you mostly beholding these days? So we gather at church to behold something so beautiful and pure that we could become that, the Christ. Fear not, for behold. Fear not, I know the bats are swooping, and you'll begin to think almost about just negative things, and you'll focus on the negative instead of the positive. So behold the good things. There is so much goodness in our world. There are so many good people. Fear not, and behold, fear not, because we start thinking that the world is filled with bad people. We start thinking less of each other. But behold, there are so many good people. Fear not, and behold. We'll gather at church this season, and that light that is the Christ, that's the light we can become. Fear not. Behold. Amen.